run. Run as fast as you can. The other way, you should never, ever, ever have to pay money.
Welcome to the Hollywood Dance Experience podcast, bringing you informational insight as well as valuable knowledge how to assist your dancers in our industry. I'm your host, Jocelyn Basham. Joining me is my esteemed colleagues. We have Miss Kristen Nurka and Miss Julie Froman. And we have a fabulous guest for this next segment of our podcast. We have Miss Jennifer Musgrove. She comes to us from Bloc Talent Agency. This is a one-of-a-kind experience. Welcome. How are you feeling today?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. It's a little warm
Happy
outside.
to be here.
Me too. I'm going to go ahead and start you off with our first question. Can you explain your role as a dance agent at Bloc Agency and how you guide and manage your clients' careers?
Sure thing. Well, mainly at Bloc, we are a talent agency for dancers. That's what we specialize in. And we work on everything across the board, from commercials, TV shows, film, tours, festivals, industrials, you name it, we work on it. Wherever you see dancers, we normally have dancers on it. And so what we do every single day is negotiate projects for clients for contracts, submitting talent, pitching talent. It's always ongoing, nonstop.
We love that.
Mm-hmm.
What are some key qualities you look for when signing a new dancer to the agency?
Key qualities. I would say, I feel bringing your individual skill set, because there's something individual about that specific dancer. It could be maybe you have an amazing outfit. Maybe it's the way that you perform. It's a lot more than just steps, I would say. Just because a lot of times when you're watching shows, think of the Fred Astaire's, like all the different performers that have been before us. It's not just about the steps. It's so much that they bring to it. It can bring your emotion, regardless if you're angry, you're happy, you're sad, you're putting all that back into the routine. And so I would say a lot of it's like performance quality. It's about making smart choices as a dancer. There's a lot of projects where it's live. You don't get to do it over again. So it's being able to pick up quickly, being a good person, being responsible, being reliable, being professional, being easy to work with. I cannot stress that. There's a lot of things that come with that. Of course, like when you're in audition, you're not gonna know all those things. But I always say, like when you're in audition, people pay attention to everything. We'll watch how you're engaging with other people. Are you constantly talking, not paying attention? So it's a lot of different things outside of just the steps.
Definitely. I think it's, as a casting director, you see everything. Everything.
And following instructions, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Because you said the casting part.
So for Bloc Agency, how do you guys support and really encourage your dancers through their career progression?
We do a couple of different things. One, we do a new client seminar where, well, not new client, but more so for the newer dancers in the industry. We also do one for vet clients as well, where we try to give them guidance of how the industry works. Of course, it's always constantly changing. Rules change, things change. And so we just try to prepare our clients as best as possible for that. And we also, for our agency, do transformational coaching, just because of course with pandemic and everything, a lot of mental health and things like that. So that's something that we've been feel very strongly about. And we were actually doing that prior to. So we just started back up a little while ago.
Amazing. Well, being at the Hollywood Dance Experience, a lot of these parents are parents of dancers who want to get into the industry. So would you have any advice for them as far as when dancers are seeking representation? What steps should they take to prepare for an agency audition, or just in general in their training versus being a competition dancer?
I would say when submitting for an agency, do your research, part one. But I would say also, if you know people that are with a specific agency, I would talk with them first. I think it's also understanding what you as a talent want out of your agent. Just because we all technically do the same thing, but we all kind of operate differently as well. So I think it depends on that individual talent, like how they want that relationship to be with their agent.
It's a good one. All right. Can you share any success stories or particular instances where you were able to really see someone's career grow? Maybe you signed them right when you were like, oh, they're up and coming, and you really, I mean, there's probably tons, but you get to see them book their first tour or their first movie or any really cool gig.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, for us, we're a team. So for that, it's not just me, it's all of us collectively working together as a team. Oh boy, there's quite a few. I would say probably one easy is Casey Rice. We repped her from when she was like mini mini. So just seeing her progress is just it brings joy, you know, and that's just for every single client, regardless if they were repped as a kid or as an adult, just because you're part of that process of helping them progress and helping them achieve their goals or working through things, just because life's. So and you know everything that they've gone through just to get to that. So it's exciting for them just as much as it is for us.
And what role do the agency play in negotiating contracts and ensuring dancers get fair treatment and fair compensation?
Everything. I mean, really, that's part of our job, you know? And so I would say a lot of that is one, never sign a contract without your agent reading it. Even if you're on set, if they said, hey, your agent signed it, said it's okay. Unless you heard it from your agent, don't sign it. That's part one. Part two, if you don't have an agent and you're still on set, then if you know someone that's maybe an attorney, maybe just have them quickly look over it. There's different types of release forms and contracts. Some are quick one-page release forms. Those are pretty standard. But if it gets pretty lengthy, that's probably where you might want to have someone definitely look at it, just because a lot of times once you sign it, it's done. There's not really much anyone can do. Sometimes we can finagle it and get people out of it, but it's pretty tough on that. But yeah, there's, especially in the dance world, there's a lot of things that we have to deal with that if you're not part of that industry, you're not fully aware of, in terms of what dancers should and shouldn't be having rates and what are standard and what's sometimes not. So it's definitely, because we've dealt with so many different type of jobs, so.
As for the evolving, ever changing world of dance, how do you guys as an agency prepare your dancers to adapt for that and continue on their journey to really continuing to make that future change? And really, I think for the biggest thing with dancers is you learn to do it a certain way, and then it's like, oh, now we have TikTok, now we have this, now we have that. So how would you say that whole world has now impacted your role?
It plays a part. I don't want to say it plays everything, just because things come and ebb and flow, right? I would say when I first started, oh my gosh, I might be dating myself, but it was in 2004. And so with that, the industry was completely different than what it is now. Not like drastic, like, oh my God, but it was only 2004. And back then it was just like you had to audition. You had to. Everything was practically open call unless it was private small calls. But I remember learning our choreographers from VHS tapes. So, and from then, like even with castings, casting directors would call us and ask for, like, we had to get like a messenger to come pick up our packages and deliver everything. But now everything's online, so you can get it across the world in a matter of seconds. I would say with the industry people, the lack of patience, I would say, because they want it like yesterday. Just because, again, with technology. But also I would say with social media, I think that's an important part, but I think it's also still important to still have and cultivate the relationships with people. Just because over the years, social media has shut down and people started panicking. And so it's like with any business. It's like you can't put all your eggs in one basket, just because if it goes away or if it shuts down, what are you gonna do? So you still have a lot of the greats that still have so many relationships with people, and that's how people constantly keep requesting them. And our industry is very relationship based. I don't even feel like just our industry, I just feel like life in general, a lot of it's based off of relationships. Just because even if you are applying for a 9 to 5 job, if you know someone that works there already, it's gonna help you skip a couple steps. Maybe not all, but at least someone can vouch for you. And that's mainly what it boils down to. A lot of times on the dance shops, choreographers are gonna hire people that they know. Just the same as if you were, you know, asking someone's like, oh, can you vouch for me? You wanna make sure that it's someone that you trust, because if not, that's gonna kind of have you looking maybe crazy to your supervisor, your boss, things like that. And it's choreographers' names on the line too. So it's just, you know, they want to make sure that they have people that can get the job done on their end as well. But just keeping up with the times, it's just we try to always do our seminars with our clients, and discuss new things that are going about. And we discussed things too about financial stability too, because you're very much paycheck to paycheck, job to job. And so if you are just blowing all of your money, you won't have anything, to save, have like for savings and things like that. And I think a lot of times for dancers, when you're in a place that you have financial security, you're auditioning differently. You're not going and saying, I have to book this job to keep like a roof over my head, the lights on. So you're able to kind of like breathe a little bit. But that just comes with time and just education, things like that. So yeah.
You say you're a team. So individually, you and your dancers, how do you maintain that relationship? And tell us more a little bit about that dynamic.
For us, we speak with our clients all the time. I think engaging with them, supporting them, going to their events, talking to them. It's really just about keeping that open line of communication. Just because, of course, one person's goals can change in 6 weeks, 6 months, and a year. And so I think for us, we always try to keep that open line of communication just because you're business partners. And so the only way that can kind of work is that you have to keep that line of communication open. So if there's questions or any goals change or anything like that, you want to have them be able to easily come to you and talk to you about it, just because we can't really help get you there unless we know. So it's just really for us, I think, keeping that open line of communication open with our clients.
Could you discuss any challenges that you have faced as an agent within the Bloc agency?
Let's see. I think sometimes in the industry you have it where if it's a newer artist, sometimes they don't understand the dance worlds. And so it's trying to help educate them on that as well, because of course you're fighting for your clients, and I think it's trying to get people to understand that, just because I think people think that dance is sometimes very easy, and it's not. You put a lot of time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, tears, money, all of that into it, so it looks so easy because of all the work that you did. And that's the same with any craft, sports, actors, all of those same things, like you put that in, the time and effort into it. So I think a lot of times I would say the challenges, I think also to the level of respect amongst within the industry as well. I think between one another, and I think amongst sometimes those that are hiring talent, and sometimes that, for them understanding what all of that entails, like dancers' rates, standards, things like that. Some of them just don't know. And then some know, and then they're like, we just can't afford it. So it's understanding like, okay, well, maybe if you can't afford it, let's maybe have less dancers so that they can be paid appropriately, or working with hours, things like that. So it gets a little challenging sometimes, but we're always on the dancer side and try to fight for the best for them.
That's wonderful. Okay, I have one final question for you before we open it up to a few questions from our audience. Could you share any tips for dancers looking to succeed in their auditions or impress casting directors?
I would say, I think practice makes perfect. I think what you're gonna do at the audition, you should already be practicing that prior to. I feel like an audition's not the place to try something new, because you don't know how it's gonna come out. Like in your head, it might come out one way, and then physically it might come out somewhere else. I've seen it in class settings too. I'm like, class is where I think that where you can try things, or even if at home. But I think also too, I think recording yourself, some people may not like to do that, but I think that's the best way where you can see what you're actually doing. Because you might think that you're doing one thing, and when you watch it back, like, oh my God, that's what it looks like. And you may not know. I think that, but I also think training, networking, and I think just taking time for yourself. You have to take care of yourself first. If you don't do that, the rest just kind of, you want to keep your foundation as strong as possible.
Love that. Well, if we have any parents who have some questions. What?
We covered it all.
Jump at once.
They're just scared.
Maybe anything about the industry, getting signed
Sure.
by an agency.
Go ahead, you had your hand up?
Can you give like an estimate, like if a dancer gets selected to go on a tour and they're dancing back up for Beyonce right now on the Renaissance tour, like how much money are those dancers making, out of curiosity? Are they paid a certain amount, like how many cities they do, or is it for the whole tour? I'm just like curious, like an average.
Each job is different. So it depends on that specific artist's budget. Of course, we okay? So like with Beyonce, of course, like you have production. Like when you have a tour, just to break this down, just as course, like talking with like strike and everything, there's a lot of things that come with every single job. When you have a tour, you're not even talking just creative yet. You're talking audio, crew, light, payroll, security, craft services. Like then you start adding more people. So there's a lot of people they have to pay out. So it really just depends on what they have budget wise. But within the community, there's a thing that we go by called Dancer Alliance, where that's something where we try to maintain that, but it's also a community based thing that is set by dancers themselves. So it depends on budget. Some artists really can't afford it. But if it is something where some base it off of what a talent experience is, have they danced with them before? And if you dance with them for several years, then you might be on a tier system where maybe they're making more than newer dancers come in. Some camps want everybody across the board to be the same. So there's not necessarily a set minimum for that, just because there's a lot of things that come into that. It's not really based off of the number of cities. It's just there's a lot of factors that go into it, and I can literally have to talk to you for like 500 hours about it. So it's not, I wish it was a simple answer for that. But I would say it just depends per camp. And there's a lot of other things that you try to look into, like sometimes usage fees, if it's going to be recorded or streamed, because now with technology, when I first started, everything was on DVDs. Like they don't do DVDs anymore. So it's just like streaming typically sometimes, or they might make it a documentary or whatever the case may be. So those are all things that you are negotiating and discussing. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes I have no idea. But I would just say it varies per camp for that. I wish I had a straightforward, easy answer for you.
If this is something that someone wanted to pursue, how do you go about that, or what's the submission process, or how do you start? Where do you start?
For getting with the agency?
Well, with that, I would start looking at, you can look at the different ones online. We have our website, social media. Some talent are referred in by people, which to me is like good. And with that could either be a casting director, it can be a choreographer, it can be a client, things like that. I would say sometimes it's just things that you typically do in your regular life, but you're switching it over to our industry. But I would say make sure that your child or the talent has, I mean, you don't have to have super amazing headshots, because once you're with an agency, they're going to go back over that with you. Sometimes it's ones that you need to get redone, or sometimes we can work with what you already have, and we don't want you spending out herds of money. One thing I will say is if you're ever looking for an agency and they're saying, yeah, to join us, you have to pay X, Y, and Z, run as fast as you can the other way. You should never, ever have to pay money to get with an agency. Like there are things that you're gonna have to do as a talent, like of course headshots, things like that, getting up on the casting site. Some of them charge fees for that, but to physically pay an agency, no, for that. But we also, a lot of for us, you can submit on our website as well, and all the details there. It's on blocagency.com for us. So yeah.
I have a quick question. I live in the Midwest. My daughter is an aspiring dancer, like most of our kids are, and I always think that to be with an agency, you have to relocate, or is that a true statement? Is that something that potentially to be a professional dancer you would have to
Relocate?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
That comes up. I would say with the pandemic, it's been a good and a bad thing, just because it's kind of shifted how the industry operates. For us in LA, there's a mix especially for commercials, where some will be self-tape based and some will be in person. We don't determine that. The casting director does, or unless their client wants it to be self-tape or in person. It's kind of, it depends. Sometimes for our office in New York, sometimes a lot of their stuff is self-tape. I would say with that, you can live out of state. I will be transparent, that will be very costly for you, because you're gonna have to fly in. You have to fly in for the job typically. Let's say, for example, if it worked in LA, they're expecting you to work as LA based. So unless you have a house already there, unless you have someone you can stay with for free, if you have a family member that works for an airline, they're going to be your favorite family member. And because those are all costs that are going to start adding up, right? And especially if it's for a child, that's you plus your child. That's 2 flights already round trip. Now, if you're coming in for the audition, that's already 1 whole round trip. Typically your callback's not normally the same day and it's normally spaced out. So then if you have to go back home, now you have to come back for the callback if you have a callback. Then third, if they book the job, that's now coming back again. That's already just 1 job we're talking about. So that's something that I always tell our clients. I'm like, that's something individually as a family you have to discuss. I can't tell you that necessarily because I think it depends on your level of commitment, what's your priority, and what your financial means are. With that, and then you can kind of determine everything else. And then with that, they'll tell me, and I'm like, okay, now I can tell you this is what I need from that. So I would say, yeah, I mean, there's projects always all over, but especially a lot of stuff in LA, it goes so fast. So the thing is, like, when you're out of state, you're gonna miss stuff because you're not gonna be able to get there like that. Now, if you lived in like Vegas, that's a little bit closer. But it's just things to think about. I'm not gonna say it's the end of the world, but I will say it kind of maybe complicates it a little bit, but it's doable. And I think it depends on the talent too.
So I'm not quite sure how it works when it comes to dancers and when they get booked on jobs or when they're on set or whether they're on tour. Is there some type of union that the dancers are a part of, or is there something like that available for them to be part of, or is that our guidelines basically determined by the agency or company that's hiring? Like, how does that work?
Are you just referring to tours only, just to clarify?
Is different, and so I know that you're doing something like TV that might fall under. Does it fall under SAG, or how does that work?
It depends. So you have different unions, like you have Equity, which is more for stage. You have SAG-AFTRA, which is like TV, film based. There also covers commercials. Under SAG-AFTRA, there's like 6 to 8 different contracts. Then there's some projects that are non-union, so it's not covered by union. Like print, for example, that's not covered by a union. So it really depends on the project, but a lot of times if it's based off of a SAG-AFTRA project, there's a signatory attached to it. And from there, that kind of determines what, if it is or if it isn't. Like let's say, for example, for a music video, if it's an artist where it's non-union, they can make it union. That's where there's a lot of particulars that go into that, but it depends per project. So if it's something where it's union, and if, let's say, for example, the talent's non-union, they can still do it unless it's something where they're a must join. And that's a whole separate situation for that, where you would have to decide if the job maybe makes sense to join for that, for it. And that's something that, again, us as agents, we always discuss with our clients because it's individual. Some people financially may not have the money to join because it's about $3,200 and up. And if the job only pays $1,000, then technically you're losing money. But with the type of project, it might make sense because maybe it's an amazing choreographer that might lead to something else. Or maybe it could be something where the project might do something else. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not just a cut and dry answer for that.
Sorry. I was going to go off hers a little bit. We're in Michigan. So if you're looking at a client to possibly sign, or any agency is looking at it, are they going to look at it in a negative way that, well, they're not in LA, so they're just going to pass? I feel like I don't want to just move out to LA until
You have something.
the ball's rolling a little bit, right? And so is that would that count against my daughter being from Michigan originally, before we...
I would say no. I think
it boils down to the talent. If it's somewhere like, I cannot pass this kid up, then I'll look at that. I think it also depends on other factors with it too. Sometimes it could be it's where we're scouting at an event, or maybe I see you at a class, and if you were like standing out to me, just because a lot of times in the industry there's a lot of competition. So I would say I don't want to say that you need to pack up and move like right now. Some people do, and if you do, I totally get it. I think the other factor that plays into it is what's their age range. Because if you're like 14 to 17, that's the hardest age range in the industry. Just because they hire adults to play their that group. It has been like that for her before I even started. Just because you have studio teachers, you have hours, each state has different laws and rules. And so for productions, they're like, okay, if I can hire adult and I don't have the same thing and I'm saving money, see what I'm saying? So it's just like those things all come into play. Now, if they're a little nugget and they're like maybe 9 years old, and it's just like then agencies will look to see like, okay, maybe we need a little bit more 9 years old, and you're like a standout stellar. It's a win-win, you know. But there's multiple factors. I think I would say to still, if there's something where you're still wanting to look for representation, still submit, and then just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And I always say, even if they don't respond or even if they don't say yes, that doesn't mean it's a no. Maybe it's just right now we don't need that type at that moment. Or maybe right now, just because of the strike, it's slow. So maybe we're kind of pulling back a little bit. Kids, a lot of times it ebbs and flows where it could be super crazy busy and then it goes crickets. There's no like, and especially just with everything with the pandemic and everything, it shifted a lot of things. Like before we used to know, like with all the award shows, like, okay, it's going to be this, that, but a lot of times they'll hire adults. So other than maybe Kids Choice, and even sometimes Kids Choice are still hiring adults. So it just really depends. Even like with the back to school stuff, I feel like a lot of that used to all be shot in the summer, and now it doesn't. It's just like they shoot them whenever they need it now. So I'm just like, people ask like, oh, what's the perfect time? And I'm like, there really is no perfect time, I feel, anymore. So a lot of parents, I remember in the past, used to come in the summertime to LA just because I would train, and I'm like, yes. Then I'm like, I have the kids in LA now. So I think it just really depends. But I would say just do it as young as possible. The other thing I would say too, if they're a minor, please have them look as young as possible. No makeup, like I would say actually no makeup. Just because a lot of times these producers, they just want them to be kids. That's literally it. I've had producers tell us that, choreographers tell us that. They were like, no makeup, please. Because a lot of times at the end of the day, literally I tell people sit and watch commercials because that's what they're wanting. They're wanting kids to be able to relate to the kids that are on the TV. So if you're having this full-fledged makeup, granted kids do that, but in the grand scheme of marketing, that's not what they're doing. So it's just kind of use some of the resources that you have out there too. That was just an extra segue, but yeah.
That was wonderful. Where can we find you on
social media if the parents in the audience would like to give you a follow?
I would say probably easiest would probably email us at the agency, yeah.
Okay.
Because I really don't check social media.
That's okay.
That's bad. Don't listen to me on that part. For the talent end, use social media. But our email is just blocassistant@blocagency.com, and then they get that over to me for that.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause for Ms.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a wonderful time. Thank you for coming and spending your time here with us today at Hollywood Dance Experience.